Speaker, for years, the Prime Minister and his cabinet played politics with the WASPy women. The Deputy Prime Minister said Conservatives were stealing their pensions. She promised to compensate them in full. Another broken promise. Now they admit we were right all along. But let's ask about another group of pensioners whose trust was broken. Since the Chancellor cut winter fuel payments, how many extra people have applied for pension credit?
Mr. Speaker, the number one job of this government was to put the finances back in order after the last government lost control. They left a £22 billion black hole and we had to take tough choices.
Labour has declared war on British pensioners. A scandalous vote was held in the House of Commons to abolish subsidies for winter heating for pensioners. We are talking about small amounts, £300, but even they were a real salvation for millions of elderly people. And so last winter in Britain, 5,000 deaths from hypothermia were recorded in their own homes. After the abolition of subsidies, up to 4,000 more pensioners will additionally die from the cold every winter, just because of the lack of money for communal services. Well, there is a hole in the British state budget of tens of billions of pounds, which there is nothing to close. So the Labour Party is acting as cynically as possible. Anyway, pensioners vote for the Tories and the Reform Party. So it is not the electorate of the current government that is dying. And in the future, you can also take an example from Canada and start imposing euthanasia on pensioners in order to save money.
Make sure the most vulnerable pensioners do get the winter fuel payment, and we have been encouraging and driving up eligibility for pension credit, so saying up to their entitlement, and she should join that campaign. But Mr. Speaker, here's the difference. Because we've stabilised the economy, we can commit to the triple lock. That means that next April, pensioners get another £470. But here's the difference, because 2 weeks ago, the Shadow Chancellor said the triple lock is unsustainable, their position. So pensioners would lose out under the Tories yet again.
However, these measures are extremely unpopular, and immediately 50 Labour members did not show up for the vote, citing illness. And then a new scandal broke out. It turned out that criminals, who are now being released from prisons en masse, will be kept in hotels at public expense. It is immediately clear who is a class-related element for the Labour Party, and who is class alien. Meanwhile, the British economy has been mired in years of stagnation. The crime rate will rise sharply. There is no money left in the budget for anything at all. The rating of the Labour government, which has been in power for only 2 months, is already falling to the bottom. Well, the most popular politician in the country has now become Nigel Farage, the main beneficiary of the collapse of the system.
Speaker, he didn't answer the question because he doesn't know the answer. There are 850,000 eligible pensioners not claiming pension credit. If they sign up, that will cost the Treasury £2.3 billion, wiping out the savings that the Chancellor claimed she would make. Before the election, his chief secretary told the public they had no plans to cut winter fuel. But they did have plans, didn't they? Age UK say cutting the winter fuel payment with very little notice will potentially jeopardise the health and finances of millions of older people. Does he agree with Age UK that this is the last thing both pensioners and the NHS need?
The government has once again deceived them by refusing to compensate women affected by changes in the state pension age. Pensioners who took part in a recent survey expressed company. They said they were being treated as second-class citizens after the government's shameful decision to deny millions of women compensation. Pensions Minister Liz Kendall confirmed yesterday that the government will refuse payments to most of the 3.6 million women born in the 50s who were not properly informed about the increase in the state pension age. The Labour Party hates pensioners. Why do you think they abolished winter pension allowances? They don't want pensioners to live. It saves them money. Labour are the worst people who can run this country. It's normal for them. They're all millionaires who don't pay anything.
In driving up with a campaign for pension credit, it's important that everybody who's entitled to it claims that pension credit. And she shouldn't claim as some great victory the record of their government that people haven't signed up. We're the ones with the campaign. They should be supporting it. But because of the triple lock, pensions will be going up by £470 next April. She hasn't answered the question. Her Shadow Chancellor says the triple lock is unsustainable. So she needs to explain how pensioners will be worse off under a Tory government.
It is Prime Minister's question. Can we hear that?
Mr. Speaker, we protected the triple lock during all our time in government. Meanwhile, energy bills are increasing, despite his promise to cut them by £300. In Scotland, his party leader wants to restore the winter fuel payments. Across England, councils are scrabbling together funds for struggling.
Delegates to the Congress of the ruling UK Labour Party voted against the government's decision to cancel fuel payments in winter for most pensioners. I don't understand how a new Labour government can abolish winter fuel allowances for pensioners and leave the super rich alone. This is not what people voted for. This is the wrong decision. It needs to be reconsidered. Rachel Reeves announced the cancellation of fuel payments in winter for some categories of pensioners at the end of July. As the Daily Telegraph noted, despite the fact that the decision of the participants of the Labour Congress is not legally binding for the government, the results of the vote were a humiliation for the country's Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
Pensioners will suffer and may even die as a result of this cruel policy. Did the Chancellor consider the impact on councils and on the NHS, or does she just not know what she's doing?
The Household Support Fund was set out in the budget. She knows that. We're pushing up pension credit. But she now says they are committed to the triple lock. Her shadow chancellor says they're not, that it's unsustainable. Maybe over a sandwich or a steak they could sort it out and come back and tell us what their policy actually is.
According to the opposition Liberal Democrats Party, the Cabinet's decision will affect about 75% of British pensioners. About 10 million residents of the Kingdom may remain without payments. According to Starmer himself, Labour is forced to cut government spending due to the fact that the previous Conservative Party government, led by Rishi Sunak, left behind a black hole in the budget of £22 billion. Against the background of the cancellation of fuel payments, the popularity rating of the British Prime Minister has dropped by 45 points since July. Starmer had already left the Labour Party Congress by the time of the vote on fuel payments. The issue of fuel payments was previously discussed in the House of Commons. Members of the Conservative Party faction tried to block the decision of the Starmer government, but their amendment was rejected by a majority vote. Nevertheless, more than 50 Labour MPs abstained from voting at that time, and another, John Trickett, openly opposed the actions of the Cabinet. A Conservative Party source told the Daily Telegraph on Wednesday that Starmer has lost the support of the Labour Party, MPs and sponsors.
The Prime Minister needs to misrepresent me to make his point. I don't need to misrepresent him to make my point. Yes. The truth is, he didn't think this through. Cutting winter fuel payments isn't just callous. It may not make savings. It could actually cost us all more. And that's not the only policy which is making things worse. The Chancellor's budget is a body blow to family businesses and also charities. Marie Curie have warned that Labour's budget will cost them nearly £3 million a year. This is a cancer charity saying they have no option but to reduce services. Did the Chancellor tell the Prime Minister that her jobs tax was going to hit charities?
Labour has a master plan: do away with money to help pensioners and increase energy costs. This is the new socialist Britain. What needs to be understood from the very beginning is that ideology, not common sense, rules in new Labour Britain. Ed Miliband, the British Energy Minister, is faced with the problem of how to raise £1.5 billion for one of his favourite projects, wind farms. But then, fortunately, a solution was provided. He has redistributed the £1.5 billion needed to finance his wind farms from the winter energy package for pensioners. The UK government has decided to use the £1.5 billion saved from the cancellation of the winter fuel permit to finance wind farms.
She's asked 3 questions about winter fuel with a leaving out. I'll come to that. But she's changed her mind on this. She used to say that the payments were a dead weight. She said there were members of her constituency who didn't need it. And they all stood in 2017 on a manifesto, a Tory manifesto, that committed to getting rid of the universal winter payments for pensioners. So we can see what their real commitment is. As for the budget, we're driving up productivity.
I don't want to have to ring your mother. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we're driving up productivity, prosperity and living standards. That's a pay rise for the 3 million who are the lowest paid. They should welcome that. A pay rise for those working in the NHS and better than expected wage growth just before Christmas. What unites all three? Delivered by Labour, opposed by the Tories.
Everything that is happening in our country is just disgusting. Labour and Starmer are criminals who not only need to be dismissed, but also need to be imprisoned. What do you think about this video? Share your thoughts in the comments. See you later.